In this video, I'm going to be going over why most coaches stay stuck below 10K per month and how, by abiding by these principles that I've simply learned through observing the overall market, speaking to and working with many coaches over the last year, and just really getting deep insights into the biggest pains and problems that coaches have. Obviously a niche video, but these principles can apply to service-based businesses as well as coaching consulting brands. So yeah, this is basically just what I've learned over the last year, and I'm going to be sharing it with you today to hopefully get you to or beyond 10K per month. So the first observation, and this is the biggest observation that I come across with most coaches, is they are trying to sell, let's say, an average buyer within their market today. And if they don't buy today, then there's not really any other pathway for them to become a client in the future, unless of course you're sort of spamming them with follow-ups every couple of months, if you've even reached out to them if they stumble across your page. Again, that's very hard to track. So what I mean by this is, let's just take the fitness coaching niche, for example. If I stumble across 9 out of 10 fitness coaches' Instagram profiles, the first thing I'll see on their bio is obviously they've got some good content on there, albeit not very structured, but they have content, they're putting out content. The first thing I see in their bio is a one-click link. That's supposed to be a link. I don't even know what that is. A link to a funnel page with sometimes a VSL, a bunch of copy, and then a link to book a call. And the problem is that within most markets, only a very small sector of the market, on average 3%, is ready to buy today, ready to buy now. They are in enough pain, they are very much problem aware, they're even solution aware, and now they're just beyond breaking point where they are looking for a solution, they need to buy. Now with coaching as well, we obviously have longer buying cycles, because coaching, consulting, information is never an impulse buy. It's never something you sort of stumble across and you're going to buy instantly, mainly because within the coaching space, you'll probably know this as a coach, we are sort of in a period of time where trust has never been lower. You know, you've got all these gurus selling sort of bullshit courses, and as a result, you've got a few bad outliers within that space, has sort of burnt the market or made it a lot more sophisticated and harder in terms of a simple sales process. Whereas a few years ago, you could just stick some ads out there with a landing page and it would convert like crazy with enough traffic. And again, that was cheap attention back in those days, within the last like 5 years. Today, it's a much different game. Again, only 3% of the market is ready to buy today. So as you can probably sense, this is actually the most competitive sector of the market. And what that means for you, especially if you're below 10K a month as a coach, is that you're competing with the biggest and best coaches out there with hundreds of case studies compared to your sort of like only a couple or maybe 10, 15 case studies. You're basically getting outcompeted every single day. They've got more ad spend than you, they've got bigger budgets, bigger brands. And so you trying to optimize your entire funnel to convert people who are ready to buy today is simply an outdated way of thinking. And that sort of applies to the second thing I wanted to go over on this video. If we look at the entire segments of the market, you have 3% that are ready to buy today. And this is what most sort of 9 out of 10 coaches are sort of optimizing for on their online and personal brand and everything. That's probably why they have inefficient funnels, inconsistent lead flow, that sort of thing. There's another segment of the market, which is around 17%, that is solution aware. And then you have 20% that is problem aware. They're aware of the problem, they're in pain, that sort of thing. What you can do as a coach, and this is what we've learned from testing with our clients and getting different feedback, different data, different results, and also just observing other people who have succeeded within the coaching market, you can get a much more efficient sales process if you can optimize your ecosystem or your funnel to basically account for up to, you know, what we have here, 40% of the market. And most people, like I say, again, they're just optimizing for the 3%. So if you can optimize your funnel or your ecosystem to basically accompany 40% of the market, then you have a much bigger pool of people to work with. But that means that you have to nurture them correctly. You have to sort of entice them in with who you are as a coach. Because again, the days of basically just running ads to a VSL funnel and then collecting cash are basically long gone. These are massive trust leaps, especially if you're selling a high ticket program or course. So what we need to do, and what we have done and tested and learned, is we need to build smaller steps of sort of trust taking. And by doing this, you're able to build up trust, albeit a longer buying cycle. But when that person is ready to buy it, they're coming to you. They are already super exposed to you as the coach, because that's a really important thing when it comes to someone buying a program. They're exposed to your process that you've spoken about in content or your ecosystem and all these sorts of stuff. That they're exposed to basically what it is you do. And so your sales process will become a lot more streamlined and easier in terms of conversions. So yeah, that is the biggest observation that I have sort of seen over the last year of working with coaches. The second thing, which is the leverage problem, is, like I said, most coaches are sort of working around short-term cycles. They're not necessarily building around long-term cycles. So when it comes to short-term and long-term thinking, you have to sort of put yourself in a position of somebody who is doing beyond 10K per month mentally, if not in reality to begin with, because obviously reality always catches up once you start acting like the person who is already at or beyond 10K per month. So somebody who is doing 10K a month or more wouldn't be thinking in terms of doing, like, spending hours every day doing sort of low leverage tasks like outreach, like countless calls and this sort of thing, whether it's like many one-on-one calls or selling low ticket programs and that sort of thing. If we want to think long term, instead of like short term, you need to build leverage within your coaching business. So there's a few different ways we can build leverage within a coaching business. One is to basically maximize your profit, minimize your workload and your fulfillment, and also maximize your value that you can provide to that client. This sort of aspect of building leverage is to create a high ticket offer. This could be anything from 1K all the way up to even 10K, depending upon who your ICP, your ideal client prospect is, or ideal client profile. And if you can do this, it essentially means that instead of dealing with like tens or hundreds of low ticket clients that you have to manage and all this sort of stuff, and you know, there's problems that come with that. You know, you've got the emotional buy-in is usually lower if they're low ticket. You need higher volume of clients at that lower price in order to make enough sort of profit and that sort of thing to live and get to 10K a month and invest in ads and that sort of stuff. So it's an overall disadvantage to have just a low ticket offer. Like I said, the emotional buy-in and commitment from that client is always going to be lower, which means that your results are most likely also going to be lower. So when you can build a high ticket offer that is super valuable, unique to you, and sort of makes you stand out from other coaches, you're able to have obviously more profit. You're able to have higher emotional, that's supposed to be a brain, emotional buy-in, which means you have better results. And therefore you can collect better case studies. And yeah, you basically provide a load more value to your market. So high ticket offers is the first thing that I would usually do with a client in order to maximize their profit and basically build the first step of leverage within their business. The second thing, when it comes to building leverage and building long-term sustainability within your market to get to and beyond 10K per month is, and this obviously is very long-term, is to build your personal brand. In fact, I'm going to add a word to this, to build an intentional personal brand. Because most coaches, again, they sort of regurgitate everything that they see other coaches do. And when it comes to personal brand, this is the most important thing when it comes to standing out. A lot of the coaching markets today are sort of saturated and sophisticated in terms of a buying process, which means you have to stand out in every possible way. And most of the offers you're going to see within your coaching space are going to seem very similar or pretty much the same. So it's hard to differentiate nowadays within just your offer alone. And the intentional personal brand is where you are able to really stand out, because there's no one who is exactly the same as you. Albeit people have similarities, but there's never ever going to be a repeat person of exactly who you are. So when it comes to buying a coaching program, people need to be aligned with three things. The first thing they need to be aligned with is your outcome, the thing that you promise, the result or the transformation that you promise. The second thing they need to be aligned with is you, the actual coach, because people don't wake up after being exposed to, say for example, one in particular coach's content for a couple of months. They wake up and they need that coach. They don't necessarily wake up and think, I need coaching. They wake up and think, I need that guy. I need that guy's transformations. They look at the case studies, everything like that. So they have to be aligned with first your outcome, the thing that you promise. Second is you, the actual coach. This is the biggest place where you can differentiate. And the third is your method or your way of getting that result. And that's, again, another thing that you can make unique to you. But again, within a sophisticated coaching market, a lot of methods sort of are all sort of pointing towards the same process, but just named differently or stuff like that. Obviously, naming is one way you can make yourself seem different. But the biggest outlier for being different, feeling different, appearing different is by just expressing who you truly are as a person on content, which is the hardest thing to do. So yeah, when it comes to building a personal brand, you basically want to optimize for a couple of things. The first thing is first impressions. The second thing is, or actually above that, is a sort of easy opt-in. And when I say that within personal brand, I don't mean an opt-in into a lead magnet or something like that. I mean an opt-in to you, an opt-in to your content, your personal brand, an opt-in that is going to be easy for them to want to follow you or subscribe to a YouTube channel or something like that. The third thing is like education. And this is the biggest thing for nurturing. So like if you can, I see a lot of coaches, again, another observation is that they just create what we would call like top of funnel content. So content that looks good, but doesn't actually provide any value. There is a place for that type of content, but it's not great if that's only going to be your strategy, like your only strategy when it comes to building your personal brand. So in terms of an easy opt-in, this is where you need to see your content as a funnel. This would be top of funnel content. So this would be stuff that is more basically content for people to be able to easily connect with you. This could be like vlog content, just documenting in public, sort of like your day-to-day, that sort of thing. So people can feel like they get to know, like and trust you as a person. This is optimized around you, the creator, basically. Then you need to also optimize for sort of top of funnel first impressions. So this is where like on your Instagram bio, for example, instead of you just having a link for them to go buy, which in most of the time they're not going to do, you basically optimize around first impressions. So if they come onto your bio, you maybe have a link to your YouTube channel. So instead of you just asking them to buy straight away, they can go onto a YouTube, get some value, get some education. Again, you can also have on your Instagram feed, you'll have like posts, obviously. You have like your profile picture here, bit your bio there, then you've got your posts. What we are seeing a lot of coaches doing right now, which is working really well, is you have basically 3 pinned posts. These are supposed to be pins. And a method that we're seeing is working right now is you have basically a post, it could be a reel, it could be a carousel going over you, who you are as a person. Doesn't really matter what order these are in. But basically your story, so people can sort of connect with you immediately. The amount of times where I've gone on to like a coach who's doing really big numbers or a coach who's being really successful right now, and they have a carousel about their story, and it's like, first impression, I feel like I know that guy. I can resonate with that guy's story of the ups and the downs and that sort of thing. And immediately you build trust with that. The second thing is essentially like the outcome. So as a coach, this could be where you have a post that goes over case studies, goes over the sort of outcome that you promise or the transformation you promise, that sort of thing. And then you also want a pinned post, it could be a carousel or a reel again, on your method. So this is your process of how you get that outcome. And by having these 3 posts, it basically just gives a really good first impression when somebody comes onto your profile. Obviously, the second part of your content funnel is middle of funnel content. So this is content that is educational, is content that will nurture people. So basically anybody who isn't in that 3% of the market that's ready to buy right now, they can basically be warmed up and nurtured over time with your educational and nurturing content. And again, you can sort of combine top of funnel content with middle of funnel content and even bottom of funnel content, which is like really niche specific, really centered around your ideal client profile. And with like a more direct call to action as well for the next step towards them becoming a client. With the middle of funnel or top of funnel content, you want really sort of trust building, low commitment call to actions and that sort of thing. So this is your sort of content funnel, and as most coaches just sort of spit content out there, you want to have a structure. Like every week, plan out what top of funnel content you're going to record, what you're going to document, that sort of thing. Plan out what educational content you're going to put out there, of middle of funnel content, and then also plan maybe every 2 weeks or something like that, putting out a more bottom of funnel content. What you could do on a more frequent basis for bottom of funnel content to convert people with content is Instagram stories and stuff like that. They are really good, and people are more likely to see your Instagram story if they follow you than they are to see your reels. So that's a really good way that you can convert. So yeah, this is basically an overall sort of short snapshot in terms of what I've just observed from working with, speaking to many coaches, the outdated thinking models, and yeah, that's basically this video. I hope you got some value from it. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you.